In the world of high finance, every digit, every letter, every morning's printout carries the weight of billions. The Bangladesh bank heist, an audacious, nearly $1 billion theft, wasn't foiled by high-tech security or bulletproof cryptography. It was stopped, in part, by a single typo, a mundane mistake that became a billion-dollar tripwire. This is the story of how a quiet room in Dhaka, a blinking printer, and a misspelled word changed the fate of one of the largest attempted bank thefts in history. It begins in the unremarkable chill of a central bank's back office, where money moves not in sacks or armored trucks, but through cryptic messages, credentials, and databases. For years, this room was the fortress, its rituals and routines so habitual that security became almost ceremonial. Each morning, a printer spat out swift activity, the global language of interbank transfers, offering a paper trail that staff trusted implicitly. If the printouts matched expectations, the world was in order. But trust, as the thieves knew, is a vulnerable thing. The attackers didn't try to breach cryptography or storm Swift's core. Instead, they targeted the endpoint, the place where the system meets human hands and old habits. With patience, they watched, mapping out staff routines, uncovering which checks were rigorous and which were shrugged off. They understood the Oracle database that kept the Swift software honest, the workstation that made decisions, and the printer that turned digital truth into tangible paper. Plans were laid for a night when attention would wane, a holiday weekend in Dhaka, Chinese New Year in Manila, when vigilance would be at its lowest. On the evening of February 4, 2016, as the city of Dhaka settled into its weekend and Manila braced for festivities, the thieves struck. 35 transfer requests, totaling nearly $951 million, were sent from Bangladesh Bank's account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to accounts across the globe, many suspiciously linked to individuals and unfamiliar corridors. The requests were perfect: real credentials, flawless formatting. Automated systems nodded them through, and cryptography did its job. In the early hours, 5 of those requests, amounting to $101 million, went through cleanly. But back in Dhaka, the trusted printer jammed. Staff shrugged off the glitch, planning to fix it after breakfast, unaware that this was no ordinary malfunction. The custom malware, meticulously coded, was at work, rewriting records, manipulating operator views, and sabotaging automatic printouts. The attackers didn't need to break into Swift itself, they just needed to change what local staff saw. With the paper trail disrupted, the theft went undetected, at least for a few critical hours. Meanwhile, in New York, the night felt off. Format checks were fine, authentication was fine, but the pattern of payments raised subtle alarms. Why was Bangladesh Bank sending massive sums to individuals, and why so many at once? More curiously, the paperwork referenced Jupiter, a detail suspiciously tangled with sanctions lists. It was enough to slow down the process, to involve more humans in the review. One transfer, destined for a Sri Lankan NGO, was stopped by something far more mundane: a misspelled word. The name Shalika Fandation appeared instead of foundation. A single letter, an A swapped for an OU, prompted a manual review and a call for confirmation. Bangladesh Bank, already puzzled by the printer's failure, took a closer look and recalled the payment. That typo, trivial in most contexts, became a billion-dollar checkpoint. For the first time that night, the thieves' plan was delayed. As more requests were flagged, the unusual Jupiter references triggered further scrutiny. The New York Fed began to slow the flow, shortening the runway for the remaining transfers. But the damage was already done. A significant chunk of money was on its way to Manila. Of the $101 million initially transferred, about $81 million landed in the Jupiter Street branch of RCBC in Makati. The funds were split across accounts opened under false identities, dormant just long enough to avoid suspicion, then suddenly activated. The money didn't wait. It was funneled through currency brokers, converted to pesos, and distributed to casinos and junket operators. In the Philippines, casinos at that time were not covered by anti-money laundering laws. No requirement for suspicious transaction reports, no oversight. The law had left a convenient loophole, and the thieves drove a fortune right through it. Laundering the money wasn't a furtive, shadowy affair. It unfolded in the bright lights of Manila's casinos, at baccarat tables, and private VIP rooms, where millions could move in an evening with little more than a handshake and a nod. Couriers carried envelopes of cash through hotel lobbies, blending in with the normal bustle of high-roller life. The funds were broken down, disguised as gambling winnings, and sent along social networks designed to be untraceable. Back in Dhaka, confusion grew. The printer's silence forced staff to question their assumptions. Why were logs missing? Why did the software act as if reality itself was bending? External investigators arrived, peeling back layers of convenience that had crept into critical systems. The Swift endpoint, meant to be a fortress, was revealed to be porous. Weak firewalls, shared switches, and a culture that had let discipline lapse in favor of routine. Malware, specifically crafted for this environment, had exploited these gaps, not by breaking encryption, but by manipulating what humans saw. The New York Fed, built for accuracy and continuity, relied on flawless messages and trusted that member banks would guard their own endpoints. When authentication and format aligned, the system assumed intent was correct. But the Bangladesh heist exposed a dangerous gap. No one was tasked with verifying the intent behind the message. The world's most sophisticated financial system had a blind spot. Attribution came later. Code overlaps and digital fingerprints pointed to North Korea's Lazarus group, a team notorious for turning the tedious parts of banking into a revenue stream for a nation. The Justice Department would eventually name names, linking the Bangladesh bank case to a string of other cyber heists. The aftermath was messy. Some money was recovered, notably the $20 million saved by the Typo, and a few million more from Manila after public pressure and Senate hearings. But the majority of the stolen funds evaporated, cashed out, laundered through the casino system, and lost to the shadowy world of junket operators. Laws changed, bringing Filipino casinos under stricter anti-money laundering rules. SWIFT launched a customer security program, forcing banks to strengthen controls at the endpoint. The Bangladesh bank case became legendary, not for the technical sophistication of the attackers, but for the vulnerability of human habits and the systems designed for convenience. The Fandation typo entered cyber lore, a reminder that sometimes the smallest mistake can stop the greatest crime. The true lesson is quiet and sobering. In a world where paper is trusted, workstations can lie, and processes assume checks will never collide, the weakest story can dominate. The Bangladesh heist wasn't about breaking math. It was about exploiting trust, exploiting habit, and exploiting a moment when vigilance faltered. In the end, $1 billion balanced on a single, misplaced A. The difference between disaster and salvation was as small as a typo, a reminder that in the digital age, the most powerful tools are still the simplest, and the most dangerous vulnerabilities are often hiding in plain sight.